What's up? I'm the Drink Pro. Today I've got a store pick of 1792 Full Proof. Thanks everybody for joining me. I'm the Drink Pro. I'm hoping you guys are subscribing, liking, and sharing these videos with your friends. If you like what I'm doing, send it to a couple people you know that drink whiskey, because I'm always trying to create a community and trying to bring us all together, and it really helps when you, the fans, help spread the message of good whiskey. Today, I'm drinking the 1792 Full Proof. Now, 1792 is made by the Barton distillery, which is actually owned by Sazerac. Sazerac also owns Buffalo Trace, but they're a very big company, and the Barton distillery is actually a separate entity and does their own separate distilling from Buffalo Trace. And in fact, Barton makes one of the best products you can get in terms of value whiskey, which I've yet to review on this channel, the very old Barton 100 proof. I hope to post a review of that soon, but right now I haven't been able to get my hands on a bottle because I finished them too quickly. But today, we're reviewing the 1792 Full Proof. Now, they call this the Full Proof edition because it's entering the barrel at the same proof that this whiskey is being bottled, which is 125 proof, 62.5%. Probably what that means is they're actually proofing it down a little bit. This is not a barrel strength or cask strength whiskey, because whiskey often will become higher proof while in the barrel and while being aged. Now, there's no age statement on this bottle, but I've heard that it's supposed to be somewhere around 8 years, maybe 8.5. There's a lot of rumors around whiskey, unfortunately, when they don't label things on the bottles. I've also heard that this is a non-chill filtered product, which I've talked a little bit about before. Non-chill filtering is essentially they just run this whiskey through a metal strainer instead of chilling it down and pulling out more of the particulate. I actually think that makes a lot of sense with a whiskey that's at this high of a proof. The only value to chill filtering is lower proof percentages will end up getting cloudy in the bottle. 1792's Full Proof is also using their high rye mash bill, which I expect to show up on the palate, especially in the finish, because I tend to find the rye spices in the finish. Now, a high rye mash bill doesn't actually mean that high of a percentage of rye, and I have no information about what percentage is actually in this bottle. Again, there's a lot of conjecture around these whiskeys, so that's the best thing I can come up with based on what I've heard and seen. One more thing that's really worth mentioning about 1792 Full Proof. Jim Murray, who's a controversial figure in whiskey these days. He's the author of the Whiskey Bible, and he's always crowns a World Whisky of the Year every year. The last couple of years, people have been very skeptical of his picks because he's picking relatively low dollar whiskeys. A couple of years ago, I believe it was a Henry McKenna maybe, but the 2020 Whiskey of the Year, once again, is a relatively eyebrow-raising pick. This is not a particularly expensive bottle, $40 to $50 probably American. This particular bottle was a store pick I got at the Rural Inn, and they went down and selected the barrel themselves, but the general standard issue whiskey was what I believe actually won the Whiskey of the Year award from Jim Murray. Now, interesting fact, number 2 that year, William Larue Weller, which is the one that I've tasted, and there's a video that I've done tasting the William Larue Weller from 2019, that same edition. The number 3 for that year was the Thomas H. Handy. I've got a sample of the 2019 Thomas H. Handy, and I'll be doing a video of that as well. So after I make this video and that video, you'll be able to see my opinion on the top 3 world whiskeys according to Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible. Now, certainly the William Larue Weller was a fantastic whiskey. We'll see if this can live up, because Jim Murray believes it's even better. He gave this whiskey a 97.5 out of 100, which is an incredibly high ranking. So I've talked enough. Let's go ahead and give this World Whisky of the Year 2020 a shot. The color of this looks fantastic. It's a nice oily texture. People often talk about the legs in whiskey, which is essentially how much it sticks to the glass. This one sticks to the glass so much that you don't even see liquid falling down. It literally looks like some sort of light olive oil in a glass, except it's got this beautiful color. Now, I am colorblind, full disclosure, so I don't know what color it is, but I do know it's beautiful. So let's go ahead and nose this. Oh God, guys, it smells so good. It's warm and inviting. It's full of baking spices. There's definitely a sweetness, I would say maybe like that caramel burnt sugar smell. I'm getting slight notes of cinnamon, some nutmeg in there as well. I'd say I'm also getting brown sugar, lots of sweetness, lots of baking spice. And you know, for something that's 62.5%, it does not have a lot of heat on the nose. It's relatively quiet. Now, this bottle has been open for some time, but I haven't done that much work on it, so there's not going to be as much of a change as you would expect from a bottle that's more than half empty. That's usually a tipping point for me. If I see a bottle that I've had more than half of, I try to finish it relatively quickly. Whereas if I have half or more of the whiskey remaining in the bottle, I take my time with it and try to let it sit there for a while. Just not only to open up, but also because I don't expect it to change that much, so I'll still be able to enjoy it if I enjoyed it the first time. The more I keep smelling this, the more I'm getting this like almost a pudding, like a sweet, sugary pudding character to it. It's very much dessert on the nose. Maybe even like saltwater taffy kind of thing going on, but without the saltwater, so just taffy. I can kind of smell the corn very subtly. Now, this is quite a high percentage of corn, I believe. I think it's almost 70-75% corn, which is quite high. So getting that corn note on the nose is not surprising. In fact, what's more surprising is how the sweetness has really translated to not be that corn grain sweetness that I often find with corn whiskeys that are 8 years or less in a barrel. You know, it still smells like baking to me. I'm getting this wonderful cookie note now. The grain smells like raw cookie dough. And cinnamon. It's like grandma's kitchen. There might be some sweet fruit in there as well, but for me it's relatively subtle. I might get some dates, very subtle date. There's some cherry there. I don't think I'm always picking up on the cherry when I'm getting so much sugar and so much baking spice. The cherry can kind of get lost for me. But that's such a classic bourbon note, I'm thinking there is some in there for sure. A lot of times I'll say there's a peanut note in the whiskey. I think some people might pick that up in this, but I'm not really getting peanut. I'm getting something that's broader and whiter, maybe a molasses. The sweetness and the nuttiness don't really come together like a peanut butter. It's much sweeter than that. And the nuttiness is closer to woodiness. There's also this sweet floral note. It may be like an orange blossom, it may be like a jasmine. I'm not particularly good with my flower notes, but I know that there's a sweet floral characteristic on the nose here. So let's give this a taste. It's a lot nuttier on the palate than I expected. I mentioned I got this very slight kind of quasi-nutty note, but it really shows up in the mid and finish on this. Ooh, and the finish is long and warm. I get this nice Kentucky hug. That real woody aftertaste. I get a charred wood aftertaste. It doesn't taste like fresh wood or even waterlogged wood. It tastes like the charred wood that you get from a barrel that's actually been charred with maybe like an alligator char or something. For a very short period of time, you get this light sweetness, and it quickly falls away into some subtle fruit notes, and then wham, you're hit with the heat and the pepper and the woody notes all in the mid palate, and it almost burns the back of my throat just a little bit. The very back of my tongue has this like hot bitterness you think would be unpleasant, but I actually really enjoy because it doesn't stay there forever. It lingers for a moment and then goes away. And it really coats your whole mouth, and there's different feelings on your tongue in different places. You're getting different tastes at different times. It's really an extraordinary pour, guys. I mean, this is like a $40 or $50 bottle, I think. I think I'm starting to understand why Jim Murray gave this so much value. I'm not sure I would call it the best whiskey in the world. I'm not having a religious experience like I did with the William Larue Weller, but it's pretty damn good. I want to mention, you guys, if you like the kind of content I make out here, please think about joining a Patreon. I've got great content up there that's exclusive. You can only get it as a Patreon member. I plan to only keep expanding the amount of content I put up there. I'm constantly trying to keep that up to date, keep engaged with the fans, and keep making new stuff. I'm not going to stop doing what I do here for you all on YouTube, but if you want some more, there's a place you can do it. So please consider joining, and you too can be a member of the Society of Drinking Professionals. Right at the beginning of this pour, there's this interesting battle between this sweet orange component and this earthy, woody component, slightly bitter, slightly woody, and then they kind of coalesce and dissolve into this one peppery mid-palate with all kinds of interesting barrel tannins and heat and cinnamon and spice. And then the finish is really long on this, guys. The finish lasts for days. It keeps moving, it keeps changing. The flavor notes on the finish aren't that different, but it keeps extending and going because they keep moving into different places. I'll feel this bitter burn on the back of my tongue. I'll feel it move to the sides of my tongue. I'll get this sweetness on the front of the tongue, and then the process repeats. And that keeps happening. I mean, maybe even 30 or 40 seconds after you drink. It's really incredible. So they put tasting notes in the back of the 1792 bottle. Let's see how I think about them. The bottle says that it's got sweet vanilla and notes of caramel, and it's got a deep and smoky taste. I think that I was talking about the alligator char. I think that's what they're talking about with the smoky taste. It's definitely a charred barrel flavor, and there's definitely this sweet caramel. The vanilla is prominent as well. It's this herbal, sweet, with smoky char in the background. It's a very well-balanced, interesting pour. Not very many whiskeys on this channel I like so much that I end up pouring a little bit more, but this one's so damn good I'm gonna have to pour just a little bit more so that I can do a water taste. All right, let's just add a couple drops to this. It is 62.5%, so, you know, water should help change it a little bit. When it's something over 60%, I expect that water will actually help open it up. It's atypical in my experience for something to be perfect at a high proof, but it can happen. Oh! I don't think the water changed it very much. It may have brought the vanilla to the forefront on the nose, but the caramel's definitely still there. That woodiness is still there. Those herbal notes are still there. I will say, I think with the water, I'm starting to recognize the high rye mash bill a little bit more. That spice of the rye, a very classic rye note, is coming out on the nose with some water added. Let's go ahead and taste it. See, I don't like what it did to the palate. The wood became a lot more present, and that smokiness kind of dissipated. It became more bitter barrel tannin wood, and the sweetness falls to the back. So the water doesn't really help the palate on this. I think the water opens up the nose, but it softens a lot of the notes on the palate. And then the finish becomes less hot and less peppery. I could see someone who's not used to full-proof whiskeys wanting some water in this, because you still get that interesting character, but a lot of things are muted. If you're not ready for the volume to be turned up to 11 on your whiskey experience, it might make sense to add water to something like this, even though it's 62.5%, and kind of the point of the whole whiskey is that's the same proof that it goes in at. But the way this is designed to be presented is really particular, and they articulate a lot of different flavors and a lot of different notes very well. Honestly, I understand why this was ranked so highly and why it's so sought after. I will say that this barrel pick was also particularly a good barrel. That can make a huge difference on the palate, so you might not have the same experience that I do, but I think it's really worth picking up, especially at the price point. If you see $17.92 full proof, you should get your hands on it. I'm going to keep drinking like a professional. I hope you guys do too. Cheers.